And as we end a pretty busy week, considering it's summer and government tends to slow down, but we had an election, we have new polls, we've got some economic problems for Donald Trump, and we are seeing this is very clearly the summer where Trump's second term unraveled. The polls tanking. He's at 30% overall. Worse on the economy, just tucking below there at 28%. And if you want to move beyond just polls, which we've all seen the limitations of, there are a bunch of other indicators, several of them are economic, that show why the Trump economy just isn't working for people. Consider one of the largest employers and retailers in our country, Walmart, a bellwether there for many things in our economy, and it's posting the weakest growth in years because of the high prices that Trump campaigned against but has failed to stem, and in many ways the supply chain suffering under the war and the gas hikes as well. Then there's the national debt. Now, this is something that kind of exists in general and has gone up for various reasons. We saw that in COVID spending. We've seen it with Republican tax cuts. So there's nothing new about the debt per se. But with Trump, they rushed through those tax cuts for the super rich, and we're now at $40 trillion. So even though both parties have certainly contributed, Trump is in charge. He has made it worse, and now his Treasury Department is basically trying to do these quick Band-Aids or sugar-high fixes to cover up a problem that will not be going away just with the tricks they've tried thus far. Here's how the New York Times puts it. This year alone, the U.S. is on track to borrow over $2 trillion to pay for the obligations, including the war in Iran and those tax cuts, which I just mentioned, that the Times reminds everyone Republicans enacted just last year. And remember, even if Republicans generally try to do tax cuts and have run on them, Trump pledged two big things: lowering prices and no more forever wars in the Middle East. And so had there been any seriousness about this, they might have said, well, let's get the prices under control. Let's make sure foreign policy is working and maybe go to the tax cuts later. That's not what they did. And so everyone's now paying for it. And a lot of people are mad. This isn't just some Trump critic or liberal Democratic thing. The polling you just saw, the problems with prices, the problems at Walmart, these are things that people are mad about. And by definition, the statistics show it's a lot of former Trump voters who are mad about this. Now, I mentioned what the Treasury Secretary has been trying to do. Mr. Bessent has been trying to sort of juice short-term fixes, sugar highs in the bond market and play defense on the high prices. And, well, a lot of folks say his stumbling performance has actually maybe made things even a little bit worse.
We've had a spike in oil prices today that I don't really understand. There's nothing magic about the 40 trillion number, and we can grow our way out of that. After the deportations that we've seen during President Trump's administration and the closing of the border, that this unfettered migration, we don't need to produce as many jobs. We're seeing the wage increase, especially in a lot of the hospitality sectors, come down. The wage inflation has come down.
Jobs fell in the most recent report, and Trump's point person says we don't need to produce as many jobs. You really can't make it up. I mean, as I mentioned, Trump has always been a bit of a bellwether for what he thinks people want. He has been caught lying and failing, but when he thought people wanted lower prices, he talked all about that in 24. And when he saw that both parties were sick of forever wars, he talked all about that. Now you have the collision of these two things, and in the summer that it's coming all apart for him, his own handpicked person says, we don't need to produce as many jobs. So if you thought last month's jobs report was discouraging, well, at the top, they apparently don't think they need to fix it. How are you going to fix a problem you don't see? You also heard their wage inflation has come down. But again, this is a kind of corporatist or elitist thing where they're saying, well, salaries may not just grow the way you're used to. And that's before you get to the fact that the high prices have wiped out most of the real wage gains people have. This is not one of those issues where you say, oh, we're so divided and people don't know what's going on and myths and lies online have confused people. The Walmart data is exactly how people are acting because they are concerned that with high prices, they have to change their behavior. The near all-time highs in credit card debt shows the crunch people are feeling under Trump, to say nothing of the open-ended war. If this is the summer where it all spiraled out of control, don't say we didn't warn you about all of the signals going into these rapidly approaching midterms. Now I want to bring in our special guest, Jason Johnson, politics professor with Morgan State University, and MS Now political analyst Molly Jong-Fast from the New York Times. Jason, your thoughts?
This is bad, and I've read several different pieces about this, how bad these poll numbers are for Trump, how much of a concern it is. The people in the White House are like, how low can you go? How low can you go? 30% is terrible heading into Labor Day weekend, which is pretty much where people start paying attention. But I think it's pretty obvious, or we've seen this the entire year. The president is completely detached from the economy that people are experiencing, and that's trickling down to all of his spokespeople. So what you've got is a bunch of congressional candidates out there running around trying to deliver a local message when their boss in the White House is louder than them. And the message right now seems to be, he doesn't care, you got to trust me, and that's why Democrats are doing so well in the congressional ballots.
Yeah, and Molly, Bessent would have a problem from those ridiculous remarks. I mean, who tells people we don't need job growth at a time like this when jobs are sagging and there's these AI fears we've been covering? But that's what you might call the messaging. He also has a substantive problem, which is this debt that everyone's paying more attention to, that they're trying to kind of, frankly, BS the bond market over. We don't need to get into all the details, but it's kind of a sugar high ploy, is built on the tax cuts that they rammed through. So the substance is as bad as the messaging.
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump, if I were the Trump White House, the thing that would keep me up at night is the fact that my boss seems not at all interested in all of his problems, right? Like the most recent news this afternoon was that the Supreme Court is going to let him keep going on the ballroom. Like if you have a group of, if you're polling terribly on the economy and people are saying, I can't afford to fill my car up with gas, and you're Marie Antoinetting it through Washington, D.C., working on the ballroom and the reflecting pool and, building the Trump triumphal arch, like it just shows a complete lack of focus. And we're less than 80 days from the midterms. Like this would be the moment for him to get out there and say the stuff that got him elected in 24, which are, I'm going to make things cheaper, given a reason for the fact that we're still 6 months into the Iran war. And gas is more than the national average of gas is more than $4 a gallon. And like people voted for exactly the opposite. So give them an explanation as to why they're living this way.
Right. And Jason, the messaging is so bad that it sort of speaks to how bad a hand they have. Right. When it comes to Trump losing elections, right, he just lies about that, and we've seen how that's gone. But lying to people about how bad the economy is, trying to pretend it's better than it is, actually makes them quite angry. And so they've balanced between that with backlash and then other stuff that's even more kind of out there, like, well, I guess if we can't lie, let's get in a time machine and talk about Joe Biden. Here's the RNC chair.
Republicans have had the White House, the Senate for 18 months now. How do you convince people that you're the right choice to make things like gas and groceries cheaper and not the Dems?
And that's why we're doing things like the midterm convention, because we got to get the truth out to the American people. The president's still dealing with the Biden issues that were left over.
Jason?
You can only blame your ex-husband for so long, right? Like at some point it's you. At some point it's your particular problem. And that's the thing. The voters are not thinking about Joe Biden anymore. They're not even thinking about Kamala Harris anymore. And I've said all along, Ari, this election, it's not about left versus right. It's not about progressive versus centrist. It's about do nothing versus do something. If you look like you're doing something, they're going to be happy. And again, not that I would ever want to advise Donald Trump, but if he wants to be doing something, look at what Mom Donnie is doing. Be a pothole president. Look at Karen Bass. Look at Brandon Scott. Look like you're doing something. You have a whole town, Gary, Indiana, that hasn't had power for a week. Why don't you go there? Why don't you bring power back to people in the Midwest? There are things happening in this country where this administration could look like they're doing something, but they're more interested in taking black heroes off of aircraft carriers and talking about brand new extensions to the White House than they are actually doing something that people are asking for the midterms.
Yeah. And you mentioned the midterms, Molly, the nonpartisan folks who track all this stuff, the sort of Kornacki's of the world, they see the Dems now improving on the Senate. And again, that may not be because the Dem candidates are amazing. It's partly because of the economic conditions I mentioned. But here's a quick political report, one of the Bibles, and they say it right here. They moved it, the Senate, that's the whole kit and caboodle, to a toss-up. And if you look at the paths, they say there are actually multiple paths to take the Senate. To remind everyone who's not a total nerd, the Senate is a funny thing because only a third of its membership are up in any given year. So the path thing matters, of the kind of arbitrary question of which states are up, and it's improved for the Dems, Molly.
Yeah, and there are things like Iowa, which, again, we've talked about this before. I've interviewed Rob Sand and Josh Turek. That's a state that has a unique set of problems that are really, cancer, groundwater's polluted, something like that, where that's like and then they've been really hit by the Trump tariffs. And there are a bunch of states that have unique problems. I mean, again, Trump had an opportunity with the tariffs when the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs to just be like, oops, we did it. And then the tariffs would have gone away and things would have gotten maybe a little bit cheaper. But instead, he was like, no, more tariffs. I'm going to get into a contest with Canada. So, again, you can really draw a line between the war in Iran and your gas prices going up and the tariffs and things being more expensive. And so for Donald Trump into the midterms, when he told people he was going to make things cheaper, you can very clearly see that he has done exactly the opposite.